Welcome to another day on our homestead. You are going to be seeing a lot of watering happening on this homestead because we have not put up watering systems in place. So we do it the manual way, the old school way. We go to the dam, get some water and water our vegetables. So today it's just me. My son is working very late today, so I have to do the watering. It's been very hot, so our vegetables are dying and we need to at least water twice a day now. So yeah, today we are going to talk about homesteading in South Africa. Welcome to Millennial Homesteader. My name is Audrey, and on this channel, my husband and I share our journey to financial freedom while homesteading in South Africa. So I am going to try to make this video as short as possible so that I can go back to the watering that I was doing earlier. So let's talk about homesteading in South Africa. One thing that people are always asking us is, what are you guys doing? You know, and why did you choose homesteading? But I think it's so simple. For us, the answer is always so simple. We always say, well, think about how your grandparents are living. That is homesteading. They are growing their own food. They have their own land, by the way, growing their own food, growing their own meat, the chickens, the cattle, the goats, sheep, etc. And they're really self-reliant on the most part, right? They can use herbs and other traditional medicine to heal themselves. They don't rely on the government for water or for electricity or, for cooking and lighting the house, and all that stuff. So that's essentially what we are doing here as well. Well, we are trying to do. So yeah, that's what homesteading is in general. We don't think it's really that different to how other people are portraying it all over the world. I think it has different flavors, but that's how we understand it. But I think there are certain things that you definitely have to think about when you start thinking about homesteading in South Africa that some people somewhere in the world would not have to worry about. And I think the number one thing is farm meadows. They are so big. There is just so much of them in South Africa that, when you think about going to live on a farm, on a plot, or on your own land, you really have to think about security. And it is really concerning. So security becomes the number one thing that you really want to get done on your homestead. So while other people are thinking about getting their solar systems in, their water systems in, and getting chickens, getting started with the garden, we have to think about getting security. And it's not always so cheap because companies who are running this kind of businesses know that security is such a big deal. So the first thing you want to get is security, and that's the first thing that's going to cost you so much more on the homestead. So yeah, so with us, we got in our security. That was the first thing, actually. We got in our security within the first 2 weeks of moving here. And fortunately for us, we were able to get someone to assist us with fencing the top part of our homestead. And then the other parts, we are going to be fencing them ourselves. It was, I think it cost us around, not too certain, I think these numbers would bring them up in another video, around 30 to 35,000, and that was really a bargain, for the section that we fenced, because it was going to go into the 60-80,000, if we had actually used someone from outside. So yeah, security is such a big deal when homesteading in South Africa. And then number two is, if you are going to get off grid, you have to remember that most of the things for you that allow you to get off grid, like your solar systems, the type of batteries, and all that stuff, actually come from somewhere outside of South Africa. So since they're already imported, it means that there is an extra amount of money that is going to be added to the price that we get here in South Africa. So it is quite pricey to get off grid. So it's not going to be just, unless you have lots of money that you've already saved up to start your journey. And for some people that are doing it in South Africa, most of them have already retired. So they have a lot of savings that they can just, put into their systems. But we didn't have that. And if you are going to start homesteading at our age, in your late 20s, early 30s, then you are obviously going to need a lot of cash flow to get that done. So yeah, it's not cheap to get off grid. That is the truth. You are going to have to do it one step at a time if you are going to be using your money, your salary that you would have earned every month. So what we just thought about when we were thinking about getting off grid, we realized that you have to be willing to let go of things that provided you with comfort in the city. You have to be willing to live a different way. You have to be willing to have cold showers sometimes because you don't have power, and you have to be willing to not have lights and use candles or use other alternative sources because your solar system, or it didn't charge enough, or it's not strong enough to be able to power your lights, or it's not strong enough to be able to power your tools that you need. So it's really important that you are able to let go of things that you would have gotten in the city and just learn to adapt to the new environment. And like, you won't die. Our grandparents have been doing this for years and years and years, and I was partially raised in the rural area, and yeah, it felt normal. It, like, right now coming back, it feels like a it's like I'm being reminded of how I lived when I was 9 years old, and all these memories are coming back, and I'm learning to make a fire again. I'm learning to cook on the fire again, and I'm learning to go get water from the dam and carry it on my head, those kind of things. So you need to be willing to adapt. You need to be willing to let go of a lot of the luxuries that you would have had in the city until you have all the resources that you need. So number three really is the fact that homesteading is not farming. So you're not going to get the advantages of a real farmer, growing vegetables to sell on a commercial level. So you're going to be paying for everything yourself, because there are no grants, from the government or private sector or whatever. So one thing you definitely have to start doing is obviously to sell your produce, because you're going to be producing a lot of food, to supplement your income on the homestead. And one thing that we found is there aren't a lot of groups or opportunities to actually sell that produce. So there are two things here. Number one, there aren't a lot of groups where you can sell your stuff. Like, in America, they have these CSA, community supported agriculture, where you can sell your food to the public through these groups, and there are people that pay for your produce, whether on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, or whatever, and then in South Africa, we have what we call the farmers markets. I'm sure there are also farmers markets somewhere in the world. And with the farmers markets in South Africa, you're going to find them in places where people are a bit wealthier, and people understand the importance of buying from a local farmer or eating organic food. So if you are going to place your homestead or buy your homestead, it would need to be closer to a big city where you'll be able to sell in these farmers markets. With us, where we are right now, there aren't a lot of farmers markets. So we are going to have to create those opportunities to be able to sell our produce, because we have a lot of it and we obviously cannot eat most of that, right? And then number two, if you are thinking of selling, then maybe you have to get bigger land so that you can produce more on a commercial level, right? So that you can actually compete with big farmers, out there. Because if you are just growing, let's say, on a 1 hectare, and you've grown different types of vegetables, chances are your produce is not enough to be taken on by a big store. So obviously they want someone who's farming full time, who is actually producing 100 or 1,000 cabbages, I don't know, whatever numbers that they want. So there isn't a lot of opportunity in terms of selling your own produce. So yeah, so if you're thinking of homesteading in South Africa, just know that there isn't funding for this type of lifestyle, because it's essentially your home. You live here. Whatever you are doing, it's like you in a suburb in Sandton or wherever. So no one cares. So you're gonna have to think about some of these things way before you even, decide to buy a homestead, and think about it when you're looking for places, to put some roots. So yeah, I think one last thing is the fact that there isn't a lot of support in terms of homesteading. There isn't like a big community in South Africa. There are a few people that do it, and a few people that do it are a little bit older. So if you're going to be young like us, you're going to have to learn to make friends with older people. We've always made friends with older people, so that's kind of cool. And we love older people because we love to learn, we love to be taught. So if you want like somewhere where there's a big community, in homesteading in South Africa, it doesn't really exist, So yeah, I mean, you may join a few groups on Facebook, but then it's not as big as it is in the USA. They have homesteading conferences, homesteading communities and all this fancy stuff. So yeah, there isn't a lot of support in terms of homesteading in South Africa. And we are hoping that we are going to start some of those communities and some of those conversations with our journey here on YouTube for all the South Africans and for all young people. I think it's really important to know that it is possible. You could do it while you're still working. You don't have to retire first to start enjoying your life on a homestead. So we hope you guys gain some inspiration with our journey and try to do this. Have a great day, everybody, and thank you for tuning in.